Hi, it's Raghu again, back with Mindrolling, and I'm delighted to be with Manoj Chalam. Am I getting that right, Manoj?
Raghu, you're right on. Jai Ganesha.
So, Manoj is now. Some of you out there may well know Manoj. He has spent time teaching at various yoga festivals around the country, and certainly my wife knows you, Manoj. She met you at Bhakti Fest. Her name is Saraswati. Beautiful.
Saraswati Marcus.
That's right. There you go.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. And she's going to be happy with all of this wonderful information. Manoj really has a lot of knowledge around the Hindu deities. And I'm going to start by saying, Manoj, my little story of I went to India, and
A few times.
a few times I've been there, but the first time I was like, okay, what? These marble statues? I mean, first of all, I grew up Jewish, and it's all no images, if you remember the Bible thing.
Thou shalt not worship idols.
Yes. So even though I was dispensing with that religion because it wasn't doing anything for me, it was probably still had some inbred things in there that were really buggy for me. And that was one of them. And so, and then I thought, and Ram Dass talks about this too, about, yeah, like it's so, oh, gosh, all of these images in the Hindu thing. I'm a Buddhist, he said.
Yes.
And that was kind of where I was at as well. Until I met Neem Karoli Baba, and he introduced us to Hanuman, who everybody who is watching this on YouTube can see right to Manoj's left, this extraordinarily beautiful murti statue of Hanuman. And that was in every temple of Maharaj-ji, he had always a Hanuman and always Mother Goddess. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yes. And how did you connect with Hanuman after that?
That's what I'm trying to say. This is why I wanted to get with you, because I have no idea what really happened. He had a murti of Hanuman and I didn't get it in the Himalayas in his ashram named Kenchi. There was a Hanuman there, and, I did all of the, namaste, but nothing. And then I went and we were hanging out with him in Vrindavan, and he had a Hanuman there, which something happened. And I felt something out of my head. It wasn't an intellectual thing, but there was some kind of wow kind of a thing. One good story that you'll like, Manoj. We have Ram Dass's Indian brother. His name is K.K. Shah. He was one of our mentors and translated for us back in the day. He's still with us today. He comes to America a lot, and he's an incredible being. There's a picture. This is so great. There's a picture. He was hanging out with Maharaj-ji in front of that murti of Hanuman, and he was off to the side, okay? Way to the side. The murti's eyes were painted so that they were directed straight ahead. There's a picture, okay, that somebody snapped with Maharaj-ji. Maharaj-ji's not in the picture, but there's KK standing to the side, and the murti's eyes are moved completely over to glance at KK, okay?
Raghu, let me pause you because your image is blurring because I'm getting tears in my eyes.
Oh.
I'm getting emotional when you started your story with Maharaj-ji and Hanuman. And it's not only tears, I'm literally feeling goosebumps.
So,
please go ahead, finish your story.
All of that is to say that although I had no intellectual understanding of the significance of murtis, and in particular the chosen, we'll get to it, Ishta Devata, which is the chosen deity that is close to any one individual. That I had no idea of anything, but so I gravitated in that moment. Hanuman. I mean, Maharaj-ji, of course, talked about Hanuman and Christ are one, and so on and so on. But then, many years later, Ram Dass built or had commissioned a statue, a murti of Hanuman, which was very unusual because it was a representation of Hanuman as flying when he flew
from Jaipur.
From Jaipur, yeah, and Siddhi Ma, who was a long-time saint with Maharaj-ji, also helped with it, as did KK. So that ended up in Taos, and I know you've been there and you've seen this murti and been with him. And once we established that as a place where he could stay, and this is all late 70s, early 80s, something happened that was just extraordinary that I cannot put into words. But it was as if when I'd go in there and just sit with that image, that murti, it was no more or less than sitting with Neem Karoli Baba. I mean, it was just such a powerful thing, and I know. By the way, we'll see if Manoj, if you would allow us to, we would put this wonderful document you sent me, which you gave out at various festivals, which is all about the different deities and what they mean and so on and so forth.
Yes, of course. Nothing is mine.
Thank you. So we will do that. But in that instant, in this document, rather, you explain how the different ways in which a murti is invested. And of course, the most traditional way in India is a priest comes and invests it with mantras and so on. And but the way that this happened was just Westerners who knew from nothing except, wow, I love you, Hanuman. It was just nothing but that. And that and Maharaj-ji, obviously, his presence in there. And that just grew and grew and grew until today, when so many people have experienced Hanuman, and so many people now know the Hanuman Chalisa, which we'll talk about as well. So all's to say, Manoj, is that this was out of the blue for me. I mean, I had no intellectual understanding that I could lean on to make sense of any of this. And after meeting Maharaj-ji, of course, I didn't try to make much sense of anything after that. But can you start us off here with talking about what these deities are, and you talk about them as archetypes in reference to Jung and so on? I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Raghu. And I'm going to call you Raghu Bhai, which means brother.
Thank you.
And it's deeply moving, you shared, and what you got from your experience with Hanuman, and also Maharaj-ji, who was considered Hanuman, not only a devotee, but Hanuman incarnate, as you know. But what you got is a hit. It's like when you look at a murti, it's called darshan, but the murti looks at you. And when the murti looks at you, it's called a kataksham, a divine gaze. And you get like a thunderbolt, a hit. Mm. And when that happens, perhaps you take a sharp intake of breath. And that's divine pranayama, the breathing. Mm. Where you don't breathe, you're being breathed. And that's the start of your beautiful journey to not only being a Hindu, but also to live your life as if you're being lived. You're not living. And that's the beauty of great saints like Maharaj-ji, who embodies this tradition. So to answer your question about the murtis, this is There's a lot of philosophy. The mindfulness has taken off. Buddhism has a strong role, and it's all good. But and then the Hindu, there's a non-dualistic philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. But then what freaks out people is when they see these statues, these murtis, they come out of the woodwork, and anyone who's been to India realizes they're part of the whole thing. You can't like distance yourself away and immerse yourself into the teachings. It's what I called half-assed awakening. You know, it has to be like full on, and sooner or later you will get into this. So there are various ways to understand these statues or murtis, and it's like peeling layers of an onion. So I'm going to peel the first layer, which is you view them as archetypes or symbols, as what Carl Jung put it, symbols within the collective unconscious. And that's the first layer. And I may as well tell you the second layer right away, which is a bit scary. And you got a hit of that. The second layer is they're not only archetypes, they're real energies. Okay. And then the third layer is a statue by itself can have energy. Now I'm a scientist by training, so I bring in a bit of science to the quote unquote woo-woo stuff. So and feel free to interrupt me with any questions anytime, Raghu, and everyone will be used to my accent, I think, by the time I'm finished. And please bear a bit of humor and comedy. I'm known as a spiritual stand-up comedian. When you're brown, fat, and you have an accent, you can get away with shit, right? And UPS is not the only brown who delivers. So archetypes, okay? So Jung was actually influenced by some of these deities, other symbols, the Greek, the Egyptian archetypes. And he said they are within the collective unconscious for all of humanity. In other words, we're all like waves in the ocean, and there's one collective unconscious, and that's really our subconscious minds. Our subconscious minds are like waves in the ocean, and it's about 87% of our mind. So we don't think, we largely react. It's like you drive home, you just get there, you don't know how you do that. And these archetypes, the Hindu, Buddhist, Egyptian, Greek, the Christian ones, the cross is a beautiful archetype. They're all buried in this one collective unconscious for the entire humanity. And then what happens is what happened for you, they pop up, especially during moments of transition, and they help guide you in your hero's journey. So, there are archetypes of all traditions, as I talked about, but the Hindu and Buddhist ones, the yogic ones, I call them, have largely persisted because the one thing people are not aware of, and which I try to make it clear, is each symbol has meanings. So, for instance, I don't know if you can see the eyes of this meditating Hanuman. He's half open, half closed. It's what is called the Shambhavi Mudra, which means he is in the world but not of it. But it's a more deeper sense of a Vedantic meditation, where it's not yogic samadhi, where there is no thought, you're absorbed in the oneness. The metaphor is your mind is like a moon in a cloudy sky. It's like the waves in your mind are like uniform. And, it's like rolling the mind, which is interesting, mind rolling.
Yeah, exactly.
You're aware what's going on. That's your podcast, right?
Exactly that.
You're in the witnessing like awareness. So you're rooted in consciousness, and at the same time, you're dimly aware. And this is the Vedantic meditation called samadhana. not samadhi. And the other thing is his archetype is Ram in the center of the chest. And we can talk about what Ram is. And then he's doing the japa mala, the meditation. And then this mudra is very prevalent with many murtis. It's called the abhaya. So bhaya means fear. Abhaya means he removes any fears and uncertainties within you.
Right.
Because the fear is usually of the other, and the other can be in time or space. But when you're in the oneness, there is no other. There is no uncertainty of the future because everything is you. There is no other in space. So there's really nothing to be anxious about. There's a pervasive level of anxiety, especially today. So this mudra is powerful.
So those of you, just to interrupt, Manoj, just because people will be listening, the mudra that is expressed in this particular statue, murti of Hanuman, that Manoj is sitting next to, is him with his right hand faced outwards and raised, and that is a very, very archetypical blessing position. So just to let everybody know what you're talking about there.
And so these symbols are within all of us, but then there's a way to bring them out. And one of the practices you can do is actually meditate with a murti. And, in other words, you create a beautiful altar, you close your eyes, no need to make it a very middle class, overachieving type meditation where you meditate for 20 minutes, be spontaneous. But the difference between this one and many Buddhist breath-based meditation is we meditate with a mantra. So the Hanuman mantra is Om Hanumate Namaha. And what the mantra does is it drops you in the gap or the space between your thoughts. Because the space between your thoughts is consciousness. In other words, your thoughts are overlaid on consciousness. So the mantra drops you in the gap and your thoughts will wander, but it keeps coming back each time you chant the mantra, and the gap increases. And your mind is suffused with more and more consciousness. And then you spontaneously open your eyes to Hanuman. Your mind is like a vacuum. It sucks in all the symbols and the energy he represents. And the energy of Hanuman is really about devotion, living from the heart, about seva, about service, about intellect. Here's an archetype who's very strong, very smart, but is very humble. And you awaken the archetype within you. What you're doing is you're pulling it from the ocean of collective unconscious to your subconscious mind. And it's like a bit like positive psychology of Martin Seligman in the 60s. He started to do research in that, where your mind is flooded with the Hanuman or any archetype, and you live your life through Hanuman. And I've seen amazing transformations happen to a lot of people. And this is only one practice. There are 4 other practices you can do to live Hanuman in day-to-day life.
I'd like to do is for us, you and I maybe, and people can do it along with us, recite that mantra for a little bit, give people an idea. But before we do that, I just want to give, here's what happened to me and other young Westerners that were there back in the day with Maharaj-ji. We were told by many Indian people who had been with him for a long time. That, first of all, every week on Tuesday they would read Sundarkan, which is a chapter from the Ramayana, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, this great book that is the story of the god Ram coming down as a human incarnation, and he eventually meets Hanuman, and his wife gets abducted by the demons, and he goes to save her, and Hanuman finds her, and it's an incredible story on so many different levels. We could do about 10 podcasts, I'm sure, with Manoj to really go through all those levels. But
and Sundarakantam is so poetic. It's amazing.
Yeah, and beautiful and full of love. So in this story, this one little thing which gave us the essence of who Hanuman is and how we could really relate, what Maharaj-ji really transmitted to us. When Hanuman does go, he tells Ram, I'm going to find your abducted wife, who was abducted by the demon Ravana in Lanka. And so I will find her. And he does go find her. And in the process, they try to torture him, and they set fire to his tail, and he then sets fire to this city, and it's quite an adventure. But he comes back to India, South India, where Ram is waiting to hear the news. And they tell him, Hanuman found her, and she's okay, and she's in the Ashoka Grove nearby, the Ravana's palace. And Ram says, well, I want to talk to Hanuman. And so they get together. And Ram said, nobody, and this is all, I'm paraphrasing, okay? Nobody has ever done what you have done for me. Nobody. I will give you any boon that you want on any of the 17 billion universes that exist, whatever you want. And it was at that moment where Hanuman threw himself at the feet of Ram and said, save me from the tentacles of egoism.
Yes.
So the only thing that is going on in Hanuman is selflessness. He cares not for himself. And his gigantic love of the one, that combination and service is really what was transmitted to us back, and some of us have brought it back, most particularly Ram Das, and of course Krishnadas with his chanting and so on, and the stuff that we do all the way to these podcasts. This is just strictly because of that. And as I said before, I had no idea why I even felt these kinds of things, but obviously this makes the most sense to me, that this is what was wanted to be transmitted and is being transmitted into the West, was these ideals. So what's the mantra? Let's do the mantra a little bit.
Can I do a little rewind on your story?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I can relate to you. You're a natural storyteller, and so am I. You can, as you know, stories and humor, it breaks down the conditioning. And in that story where, in the Sundarakantam, it's very beautiful. So Hanuman has all these powers, but, as a young boy, he creates a lot of mischief. So he was cursed by the gods that he would forget the powers until he gets reminded. So the metaphor is, we have these powers, and sometimes it takes a friend or a teacher to remind us. And in your story, you shared Hanuman, this monkey, volunteers to unite Ram's wife, Sita, to Ram. And he has this band of monkeys, and they go all over India, couldn't find it, and they end up in southern tip of India, and they're all saying, shaking their heads and doing the Indian, what to do, right? And then in that moment, Sita is in a island of Sri Lanka or Ceylon, about 200 miles away. And that's when an older monkey reminds Hanuman of his powers. And in the Sundarakant, it's said very beautifully when Hanuman remembers. And that's what the Hanuman Chalisa is about, reminding Hanuman of his 40, the 40 Chalisa phrases are about his powers. So it's so written so beautifully. When he remembers, he enlarges himself and he steals his prana. His thighs are like super, super strong, like Arnold Schwarzenegger times 1000. And then he grows huge and he emits a huge roar. Whoo! And he takes off and literally is able to fly. And it's like an airplane taking off. There's so much entrainment. The bushes, the snakes leapt out of their burrows. There was like an earthquake. And then he flies into Sri Lanka. And then the eventual story is he unites Sita to Ram. So the metaphor is he unites the individual soul, Sita to Ram, the universal soul. But to your point you made about the ego, which is the desire of Hanuman to be egoless, the other teaching for us is anyone can have the ego come back, even a great guy like Hanuman. Because in the story, Hanuman, when he jumps into Sri Lanka, then he looks around and a trace amount of ego comes up. He says, hey, I'm the man. I've jumped 200 miles. Maybe I can jump to Australia or New Zealand. So the ego comes up even for an amazing, humble deity like Hanuman. And that night he couldn't find Sita. And that's where he gets reminded to be the egoless state all the time. And that was one of the reasons when he fell at Ram's feet, he literally pleaded, please, no ego, no ego. And I'm so happy you're sharing that story to your people at your retreats. That's a very powerful story.
Yeah, very much, very much. We're all about Hanuman right now, everybody, because it's my favorite thing. So you have to go along. We may include Mother. We probably have to include Mother. We're going to talk about her a little bit. And the fact is that Hanuman is an incarnation of Shiva, right?
And there's a story behind that.
Yeah, tell that one.
Give a few minutes?
Yeah.
So Shiva was meditating on Mount Kailash. It's there in Tibet, right? Mount Kailash. And he gets an insight and he shares with his wife, Shakti or Parvati. He tells her, times have changed and there's way too much greed in the world, too much, twittering, too much, it's all coming from greed and, the whole egoism, right? The whole Descartes model of I think, therefore I am comes from ego. And then the Vedanta flips it to I am, therefore I think, which is like we're coming from consciousness. But then Desmond Tutu said it beautifully when he said, we are, therefore I am. So there has to be like a community. And Shiva felt no community going on in the world, too much ego. So he shares it with his wife that I'm going to incarnate as a lowly monkey. And the idea is, people will not learn some deep philosophy from a monkey. That's a monkey. And show through example the power of devotion. So when he tells it to his wife Shakti, Parvati or Shakti says, hey, what are you talking? You're the man. He said, no, there's a new man in the universe. His name is Lord Ram. And I want to incarnate to serve Ram as a monkey. So his wife Parvati said, okay, I'm going to incarnate as a tail. So Shiva becomes Hanuman and his wife Shakti becomes the tail, and the tail is the Kundalini Shakti, the power. And feel free to explain what that is if you like. That's why he lights Sri Lanka fire with the tail. The Shakti, the word Shakti means the power of consciousness. But then there's a process by which Shiva becomes Hanuman. It's a PG-13 story. There was a monkey queen, Anjana, praying for a son. And, so Shiva becomes Hanuman by letting his seed go in the wind, Vayu. So another of Hanuman's father is Vayu. He was like a messenger. So here's a queen, she's a queen, she's wearing a skirt and she's praying. And then the wind carries Shiva's seed. And then here's where it becomes PG-13 because the skirt like flutters, woo, woo. And we don't know what happens inside, but out pops this little boy, Hanuman, right? Yeah. So it's a very beautiful sort of, the metaphor is we can be Hanuman-like. We have the powers within us. That what Maharaj-ji, he was called Chamatkar Baba, doing the siddhis, the powers. It's to demonstrate the power of Hanuman in each of us. And that's what I feel the entire foundation is carrying on right now.
Yeah. And it's so amazing that so many people, Manoj, know the Hanuman Chalisa. It's staggering, right? And, many people, maybe they don't learn what the words mean when they chant. That is a process that everybody should consider. It's something Siddhi Ma used to tell us all the time. But the reality is, one verse here, one verse there, but what you just said is extraordinarily important in all of this. Beyond Hindu, Buddhist, Jews, Christians, Muslims, the reality of reminding ourselves of who we really are. And in this case, this is a practice that has been given to us, that we've shared over the years, and particularly, of course, Hanuman Chalisa, Krishnadas has really been at the center of that sharing. But that reminding of who we really are is it's the most effective thing that I use in my own practice on a day-to-day basis. There's something you wrote here in this thing that I was not aware of, and that's why I love getting this from you. There's so many wonderful tidbits in here. Many aspects of yoga, right? And you're speaking of Hatha yoga in this case?
Yes.
Come from Hanuman, including many asanas. His father was Vayu, right? Manoj just mentioned, the wind deity. So he taught the yogic world pranayama, right?
Yes.
Which is the use of using the breath to clear the inner nadis and channels and so on, and also bring the mind to one point, and then and they're finding that these breathing exercises that can easily be learned, by the way, and that's something else. You guys that are doing the show notes for this podcast that's going to be up there, let's find the most efficacious, simple way for people to learn a little bit of pranayama. And I know my wife Saraswati teaches it as well, and I'm sure you do as well, Manoj, so we should get as many resources as possible on that one.
Yes, of course.
And Hanuman's guru was Surya, the sun god. So he taught the world Surya Namaskar, the sun salutation, which everybody who goes into their local yoga center is one of the first things that they're taught. He is so intelligent that he is able to reconcile the three main systems of Vedanta philosophy. Something else I loved reading, duality, which is Advaita, Vashishta Advaita, qualified non-duality, and
Vishishta Advaita.
Yeah, Vashishta. And Advaita. Vishishta. Okay.
Yes.
And Advaita, non-duality, and I love, and this is really well told, and this is something we also mention quite a bit when we do these retreats. At some point in the story, Ram says to Hanuman, like, "Who are you?" And I'm going to just do this on a short thing. When I identify with my body, I am your servant. When I identify with the soul, I am part of you. When I identify with pure consciousness, I am you. So this is extremely important that he was able to just cross over all and understand fully these three very important things. So Hanuman, Bajrang Bali Maharaj ki jai. But
Jai.
what's the mantra? Let's do a little of the mantra in the middle of all that.
But Raghu, also,
Yeah.
I love the way you articulated that, because you're not just reading. You're, in my opinion, you're channelizing Maharaj-ji. The way I got another hit, and maybe the podcast is about you and not me. I'm like, wow, I'm
No.
getting a.
It's an us. It's the we. It's the big we, and that's a big part of what we do. What we hope to really share is how to get from the me to the we, and that's what and these archetypes go a huge
But
long way.
also the approach. I meet in my travels, and I've been doing this 18 years. So many different traditions, and Hanuman is a unifier. He's not. He doesn't like divide, and I see it with Maharajji's devotees, even people who haven't met him. I met a guy from Phoenix who saw his picture and he got a Shakti blast. But the people I meet, Maharajji's people, are pretty chill, number one. I would call them perhaps old hippies or hippies, and they're still hippies in an attitude, without the acid, I hope. But then it's really a way of being comfortable with all traditions, Buddhism, different bhakti traditions, non-duality, Vedanta, the witnessing consciousness. And to me, I resonate a lot with that, because there's a tendency to just say, to get a bit Taliban about your path, and that's, I really think that comes from Hanuman, and you articulated that beautifully. It's about unification.
The first thing, Manoj, when we sat down with Maharaj, he went like this, pointing a finger, one finger, sub ek. There is only one, and he would go on day to day for a while. That was it, sub ek. There's only one, Hanuman, Christ, Krishna, Buddha, Ram, Muhammad, all one. So
Different faces of the one.
Yeah, so that's definitely part of certainly our legacy. It's the core of who we are and what we share. Okay, do you want to do this? I want to do the mantra, Manoj.
Yes. Shall we? People, they can see the murti of Hanuman. So it's not only the mantra. Let's do a short guided meditation, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the mantra is part of that.
Okay.
So please close your eyes.
Not if you're driving, please.
Not if you're driving. Just make your breathing uniform. It doesn't have to be any quiet environment, because as you know, there is no quiet place in India. The idea is to calm your breathing, because when the breath is calm, the body and mind becomes calm simultaneously, because we have these different layers in our body called koshas. And the first layer is the body, Annamaya kosha. Second layer is the breath, Pranamaya kosha. And the third layer is the mind, Manomaya kosha. So relaxing your breath relaxes your body and your mind simultaneously. because your breath layer is in between your body layer and your mind layer. Just abide in your heart. That's the seat of consciousness. That's the seat of Ram. That's a seat of oneness. That's a seat of love. And chanting a mantra drops you in the gap between your thoughts. No need to control the thoughts. Just chant the mantra silently in your mind along with me. And the mantra to Hanuman is Om Hanumate Namaha. 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 The space between your thoughts, the gap, is increased. Your mind is suffused with the mantra of Hanuman. And the next step for people who can see the Hanuman murti is gently open your eyes and gaze at the Hanuman. Gaze at the serenity which he looks at you. Notice the way he sits on the floor. Most murtis have lotuses. Hanuman is like us. He's sitting on the floor cross-legged. He is the ultimate buddy, the ultimate friend. And the word for that is Sakya Bhava, just like Krishna was a friend to Arjuna. And Hanuman reveals us the highest teachings of consciousness. Jai Hanuman.
Jai Hanuman. What's that? As the friend, what is Sak? Spell that out.
Yeah, so when you're with your archetype, you can have different relationships.
Yeah.
So for instance, with Krishna, you can be his lover or you can be his mom. With Hanuman, he's your friend. He's your ultimate buddy. And the spelling is Sakya, S-A-K-Y-A. Hya, Sakya Bhava, where the feeling is he's your friend who reveals the teachings. And who is a friend? Someone who understands you, someone who accepts you the way you are. You may have shadows. In fact, we all have shadows. And Hanuman accepts you the way you are, and he teaches us we can transform through the power of love, devotion, living from the heart.
Perfectly said. That was wonderful, Manoj. I really appreciate that. Before we have to get in, as I said, we will do more podcasts so that we can talk more about different deities. But we do have to. So the other deity that was transformational for us,
Durga.
Durga. How did you know that? I'm kidding.
Hanuman and Durga got together.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yes, it's interesting. I felt that.
And I myself personally had another experience. So the only two experiences I've had with Murtis have been Hanuman and in particular Taos Hanuman, and also that Vrindavan Hanuman. But I was in Benares once, and somehow I was led to a murti of goddess called Sankata Devi, hidden in the alley. Do you know it? I don't know.
No, but Sankata is really dispelling our worries.
Remover of troubles.
Yes.
So I went in there and not expecting anything, slightly spiritual tourism, not really, but again, I was transfixed standing there in front of this golden-faced image, which I have had, and I have in my altar since that day, which was sometime in the mid-'80s or something.
Jai Ma.
Yeah, Jai Ma. So here's your little summary. Goddess Durga is goodness in a fierce form. She removes the negative energies that do not serve us, both within as well as directed towards us. Now, we were, aside from my experience with this particular Murti in Benares, Sankata Devi, Maharaj-ji gave us Siddhi Ma, and I think you know she is someone who was with him for decades and decades and decades before he left that physical body, and then suddenly, bang, there she was, appeared to us, and has been our Indian mother until in a physical body until she just left, which is end of last December. And
was she staying in Kimchi?
She was in Kenchi, yeah, and which was also in Rishikesh ashram, and she would spend time in Vrindavan, and not in the most recent years, but Maharaj-ji more than once. In fact, he took her. This is a story, just appears in my mind. There is, I can't remember if it's near Allahabad or Chitrakoot somewhere, is Vindhyavasini Devi, that form of Durga. Vindhyavasini. So there's a Vindhyavasini main temple in Madhya Pradesh, I think, somewhere. And
I haven't been there. Yeah.
But so Maharaj-ji went there, and he took some people, including Siddhi Ma, and he actually had her sit in front of the altar, and he did some mantras and so on, and said, "She is that." And he did that more than once. And that is my complete experience, and I had the good fortune to experience that in this saint. So Durga has always been so dear to me, and I love Goddess Durga is goodness in a fierce form. I mean, she was Siddhi Ma. I mean, Siddhi means powers, and she was a spiritual powers, and she was the mother of that. And anyhow, I can't go into a whole thing about her because that'll be another 3 or 4 podcasts. But just give us a little bit of a transmission around Durga.
Yeah. So generally, Durga has like 8 arms. And each arm represents a power. And if there's one archetype whose everyone is Durga. And there's a long story on how Durga got emanated. But the whole idea is, we have the demons within us. And, the worst demon is what is called Mahish Asura. Mahish means buffalo. It's like the deepest tamasic demon within us. Like nobody looks in the mirror and says, I'm not going to do the same stupid thing today. And by the end of the day, they end up doing the same stupid thing. So we all know.
A good definition for tamasha. I like that.
There you go. We all know what's the one thing, the main thing that holds us back is. And in the story, the demon has all these powers through, he does a lot of what's called, tapas and sadhana, spiritual practices to Shiva. So he gets this boon that no existing god or goddess could kill him. So the metaphor is the demon within us can be killed by an existing entity, which is our ego. So our ego is like the flashlight and the demons are the battery. And the flashlight tries to look for the battery. No, it's controlled by that. So the gods and goddesses, are powerless to deal with the demon, just like our ego is powerless. And the AA talks about, we're powerless, in front of these addictions. And so all the gods and goddesses had a massive meeting, and they created a new entity, Durga. So the demon's Siddhi, the demon's power that he had, that no existing god or goddess could kill him, didn't apply to Durga. So Durga is really the power of the collective unconscious. She's everyone. She's full on. And each god or goddess gives their, what's called their weapon of choice. So she's like uber weaponized. For instance, Vishnu gives us conch shell, the chakra, the wheel of samsara. There's a play in Los Angeles called as Vishnu Dreams. We're living in a Vishnu's dream. Ram gives us bow. Shiva gives us trident, the Trishula. Kali gives an axe. So Kali herself is part of Durga. So, and then Lakshmi gives the lotus. And then Hanuman himself gives the club, the mace. So Hanuman is a bit like Thor. Thor has a hammer, and Hanuman is a club. So, but Hanuman's a lot smarter than Thor. And she comes on this fierce lion, and you can almost picture the demon, standing, and Durga is emerging from the collective unconscious through the doorway on a fierce lion. And the beautiful face is Shakti, Parvati. She's gorgeous. So this amazing woman, but who's also fierce, comes bobbing and up and down on this lion. And you can imagine Krishna Das chanting Hey Ma Durga in the background, and he wins a Grammy, right? And then the demon takes one look at her and he falls in love. He says, come, marry me. We will torture the world together. And she doesn't she doesn't buy into that, because she says your tendencies to be demonic, you're not going to let go of that. So the demon surrenders and she slays him, and she becomes what's called Mahishasura Mardini, the slayer of the demon Mahishasura, the demon within us. But the idea is we don't have to hate our shadows. They're part of us. And Durga teaches us to work with them, gently have them attenuated, and that can be a form of self-actualized behavior in your hero's journey, where you are able to integrate your shadows. Maybe you take a look at your neighbor's flowers, enjoy them, and maybe steal a couple, have a little wink, and say what to do. Yeah, it's a way of living life. And I want to share a quick story on Durga, because she's also my archetype. So my archetypes are Ganesh, Hanuman, and Durga. Ganesh removes obstacles, gives me knowledge. And what use is knowledge if you don't use it to serve? So Hanuman puts me in the flow state. Hanuman is literally about the flow state, and that's a subject for the future. When you are in the autotelic state, you can be in the flow state. But Durga came into my life. Sometimes the archetypes come to you. Like, for instance, when you went to the temple, I was in teaching at a teacher training in Cincinnati about 8 years ago, and I wake up in my hotel room in the middle of the night at like 10 minutes to 2 with a dream about Durga. And I was wondering, hey, it's in the middle of the night, why neither early nor late? And then 10 minutes later, there was a fire, and we all evacuated the hotel. So here's a demon that was external, and sometimes Durga comes to you in your dream. And it's very interesting. Jung talks about dream interpretations and analysis. So I try to relate the archetypes as very personal, energies you can work with. We can all use some help.
To say the very, very least. And this whole podcast, Manoj, has been a great... you've shined a great light on how to relate with these deities, should you have any interest at all. And if you've been listening to Mindrolling or anything on Be Here Now Network, you will, of course, have to have come across us talking about different deities. And it might be not just in Hinduism, but, and you talk about Tara, which crosses both Hinduism and Tibetan Buddhism. And so this does give us a leg up. I really thank you just to have an idea about really these things are real. And like I said, I went out at first and it was just some weird ass statues with gaudy colors, and the whole thing was gaudy, and I didn't expect to happen what happened to me. And I've seen it happen to many, many, many people in many different ways. So we shall continue this conversation. Manoj.
Raghu, I'm humbled. I feel truly we're together in the bow, in the flow. And it's a beautiful conversation about love. And at the end of the day, we may have differences, but we have only one love. There's no Indian love, American love. Yeah. There's only one ocean of love. Yeah. And that's what I feel everything you all do coming from Maharaj-ji is love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, everybody, we are going to have as much of the resources that we've been talking about on the show notes page of Mindrolling and on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com. And, of course, there's a whole host of wonderful teachers and podcasters and thought leaders and so on. And there'll be a way to connect with Manoj. What's your URL? Give us a URL so people can access what you do.
Well, that's been the interesting thing. I've been doing this 18 years, never had a website.
Oh, okay.
It's the old-fashioned way where I connect with people. However, I've done so much traveling, so many events, so many teacher trainings. I literally am slowing down. I'm succumbing to website, podcast. This is my very first podcast. Thank you, Raghu. So I'm going to, we also do retreats in a temple. You're all invited. It's practically no charge because this is teachings of, the ashram model. There is no literally.
And you're in
very different.
Florida.
I'm in San Diego.
San Diego. It's right next to Florida, right? San Diego.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well,
no mosquitoes though, but we have a beautiful temple. We have retreats. So I'm going to put a flyer. I'll give you a flyer for your show notes.
Okay. Yeah, you'll definitely give an email that over.
The flyer will have the website.
Okay.
But we will have a redesigned website because right now it is very old stuff right now.
Okay. Great. All right. Wonderful. So, and we will do this again, Manoj, because there's so much wealth here that I would love to share with people. So, namaste.
Jai Hanuman.
Jai Hanuman.